Fresh from his State of the Union address last week, President Biden on Monday unveiled his $7.3 trillion budget for fiscal year 2025, an election year wish list that heralds his priorities for a second term, including $5 trillion in tax increases, but a mere 1% increase in defense spending, which actually amounts to a cut after inflation. Let's bring in Wall Street Journal columnists Dan Henninger, Mary Anastasia O'Grady, and Alicia Finley. So Dan, what did we learn about the Biden second-term priorities from that budget?
One of the biggest things we learned is that Joe Biden, and indeed I would say the Democrats, and this is a very important issue to me, will not rebuild U.S. defense capacity. I mean, that 1% increase is a cut after inflation. It's been true for the last several years with the Democrats. And their priorities are on domestic spending. I mean, we're talking about a spending package of over $7 trillion. And the Democrats, I think, now that they are basically the party of Bernie Sanders, which I think they were from the time of the primaries back in 2016, are going to focus on domestic spending and will not make the commitments necessary for the United States to be able to position itself in a world that we know is extraordinarily volatile right now. The Middle East, China, Putin and Russia. It's not a normal peacetime era, and we really do need to readdress the defense structure, and the Democrats won't do that.
Yeah, Mary, that's the most striking thing to me. I mean, you've got the war in Ukraine, you've got China building like crazy a new navy and defenses, and then you have the Middle East, and who knows, Iran may be nuclear soon. And yet, it's like nothing changed for the president in this budget.
Well, I mean, this is classic populism, right? And he wants to spend on domestic issues, as Dan says, but he is ignoring, I mean, one of the really big glaring problems is troop recruitment. I mean, they don't even have enough money to actually pay people, what they need to pay them to recruit. And there are other big technology problems like satellite
vulnerability, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, so you go from the boots on the ground to the high-tech stuff, and he's not willing to, pay up for any of it. And that's a real problem, as Dan says, for, our role in the world.
Mary, what about the taxes in the budget?
Well, what makes me laugh about the taxes in the budget, which is basically, again, classic populism, tax the rich, is number one, he looks at this as static. So he's going to hit, for example, he's going to have a wealth tax. He's going to increase tax on the 1,000 billionaires that he's identified. He acts as though people are not going to behave differently. He's got a very static analysis of how the economy responds to tax increases. And the other thing I think that's really depressing to see a president with this kind of experience not recognize that corporations don't pay taxes, people pay taxes. And so the likelihood that a lot of these taxes are going to be passed on to consumers is very high.
Yeah, Alicia, some of the details here on the taxes are pretty amazing. 28% rate he wants for corporate income tax, up from 21%, and a huge increase in the capital gains tax. So the tax on capital could go up to 50% or close to it.
Well, it'd go up to 44.6% for the highest earners, over 1 million under. But if you add in the California or New York State taxes, some people could be paying up to 60%. What he does is essentially extend this Medicare payroll tax, 3.8% that Obamacare initiated, and he applies it to a lot of small businesses. And not only that, he increases it to 5%. So all of a sudden, small businesses who are now paying a top rate of 37%, these are pass-through sole proprietorships, they'll all of a sudden be paying a 44.6%. And he also reduces the brackets, by the way, so the top bracket would kick in at $400,000 instead of $690,000.
And that $400,000 is not that he claims is, nobody under $400,000 will get a tax increase, but that's not indexed for inflation.
That's not indexed for inflation. In fact, those who earn over $200,000 would also experience a tax increase because this Medicare tax that was Obamacare would actually be applied to those who earn more than $200,000.
Dan, I guess this is a big deal, this taxing issue, because the 2017 individual income tax rates expire in the end of 2025. So whoever is the next president is going to get to rewrite the tax code of the United States.
Yeah, and Joe Biden, again, once again, his policy is basically reverse Trump. I mean, Trump did bring taxes down to the corporate tax, and incidentally, he repatriated hundreds of billions of dollars of overseas profits back to the United States. They did that on the expectation it would be taxed at a lower rate. If Biden is going to start moving in the opposite direction, it's going to create pressure once again for corporations to find a way to get out from under that. Individuals, it's not so easy, but corporations can find a way to run around the back.
He couldn't, briefly, Dan, he couldn't pass this, though.
No, he couldn't. It's a campaign document,
in the first,
for sure.
So I guess he's banking on sweep, a big electoral sweep. That's the only way he'll get it, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things at stake in this election.